asked to think of making a presentation, the very attractive title that you just heard, my first reaction was Mission Impossible. Because there are clear conflicts, even the words. As you talk of industrialization, you're also talking about safety, green, clean, safe and serene. And the first reaction is it just can't fit if you really are serious about what is now considered industrialization. Of course, this is Tobago, and I'll compliment you for attempting the impossible. That's fine. On the other hand, if one looked at existence of man and our whole history of mankind, by far the largest period of our existence was clean, green, safe and serene. Notwithstanding the fact that over that period of time, man looked after himself, he was able to feed himself, clothe himself, and carry on what in our modern terms would be called business activity. It may not be industrialization as we now know it. But when you introduce the word industrialization, which is relatively new, we're talking about what happened after the Industrial Revolution, started in the United Kingdom. Prior to that, perhaps the only major event in man's growth and development was way, way before that, when man discovered fire. Major event in the history of mankind. He discovered fire. And then we started to have to worry about safety, green, and serenity. And as man progressed, the control of fire and his use of fire, not just fire, but the control and its use of it to help him in his daily life, of course, increased substantially. Bringing us all the way to the Industrial Revolution in the 17th century, where, and this is sometimes not recognized, let's take the word energy, which we now take for granted. That word itself was only coined in that period of time, 200-300 years ago. Up until then, as I said, the word energy really had no meaning or no significance. It's not part of our vocabulary. So here we are today, and one first reaction would be, well, maybe Tobago is trying to take us back centuries behind if we really want to achieve what is clean, safe, and serene. Your title, branding, and branding Tobago as distinct from branding Trinidad and Tobago is very, very important, and I want to emphasize this point. If you want to achieve clean, green, safe, and serene, you have to do it alone. And the reason is, if you look up the statistics, Trinidad and Tobago as a country now is very much on top of the list in the world. It's in the top 4 of carbon dioxide emissions. So if you link yourself with Trinidad and Tobago, not only is your task impossible, but it will never happen. So your attempt, and I hope it's successful, while you remain part of the country of Trinidad and Tobago, branding your island as being different, and that attempting to be clean, green, safe, and serene is an important, difficult maybe, but important, but not as difficult as perhaps you think, but it's a very important attempt on your island. Once you link with us, once you link with Trinidad, once you become Trinidad and Tobago, you will be linked in the world. If you look at all the statistics, as being one of the greatest contributors to global warming on a per capita basis. Bear in mind, I'm talking about a per capita basis. On a per capita basis, I just threw these figures out. Forget the units. Our figures of the order of 39. Jamaica is 7. Barbados is 5. In the United States, it's only 17. So we're way up there from the point of view of the rest of the world when they look at Trinidad and Tobago. Per capita, we are one of the devils, as it were, right at the top of the list. So the attempt for Tobago to, your first task is what you're trying to do, brand your island differently. You have to do that if you want to achieve what you're thinking of, being green, safe, and serene. And the next question is it possible? In the world of today, where we're actively looking for investment, industrialization, employment, adding value, the big, almost a rat race, countries all over the world are seeking to achieve that. Can Tobago, and not only Trinidad and Tobago now, can Tobago achieve this? And my answer is yes, a very emphatic yes. And there are a couple of examples that we may not be able to follow exactly, but there are examples who have achieved this without some of the inherent advantages that Tobago now has. There are two that come to mind, relatively small, in basically almost same kind of climate, almost same kind of history. I refer, of course, to Bermuda and Singapore. Singapore, of course, is now on a per capita basis highest in the world. At the top of the world, GDP per capita in the world. Developed country without example. I'm not necessarily saying that's the model you have to follow. I'm just saying it's possible using what they have to do what they have done. And they have gone through this process of not saying, well, we're only going to attract business that is initially safe, green, etc. They went through a whole process. They went into manufacturing, they went into this, that, and the other. But they've reached a point now where what they now do and the businesses they now attract, which is mainly the services sector, places them in that category. They have a tremendous disadvantage. They have no sources of fuel, of energy. It's all imported. But they have a very positive advantage. They're placed in a position, one of which may be of interest to Tobago, where they serve two big markets. On the services, banking, finance, insurance, they're in the middle of Asia, China, Korea, Malaysia, etc. We're not there. I don't think we can strive to be that as yet. But they also serve a very important service. I heard mentioned earlier, we were talking about several types of tourism. They're also in the middle and very close to, say, a country like Indonesia, as also Japan, and they project themselves as R&R. These countries, Indonesia, for example, very big in oil and gas, and all the big companies there. The employees look for an opportunity of getting away from that, and that's one opportunity. Similarly, Japan, with their hustle and their bustle, they want to play golf, they want to be in an environment that is pleasant, they look to a country like Singapore. And as you go to Singapore, which is the point I'm really trying to make, as I said, there are things there that I wouldn't want you even to consider copying, but as you leave the airport, you get the impression you are in a garden. Greenery, all the way. You get the impression you are driving through a botanical garden. their streets, everything. They control in a very draconian method their traffic and their pollution from transportation fuel. For example, in Singapore, it is extremely difficult to buy a car, extremely difficult and extremely expensive. Even before you buy the car, you have to apply for a license, and they'll only release, I think, every 10 years the cars are replaced. You can't drive a car more than 10 years old. That's why a lot of the foreign news come here. After 10 years, you're not allowed to drive a car. You're not allowed to own a car or have a car on the road, so it disappears. And they only give licenses for the cars that have been replaced. And each time you then have to apply for a license, and you may not believe this, but not buying the car, the cost of a license is $100,000 US. And if you haven't bought the car, you're told one day of the week only cars with even numbers, and the other day cars with odd numbers. So they're very tight restrictions. Trainees can't live there. We don't like restrictions. I'm just telling you how it happened. You'll be in jail every day. you drop a cigarette butt, and you're fine. No, that's not our culture. I'm just telling you that's how it is. But they've achieved several things, and are now moved away from what you would call the normal industrialization practice and become a center for services, banking, insurance, etc. I'm very successful at that. Bermuda, which is the other island that is very different, still very much a colony. But again, what they have projected there, which you have much better resources than they do. They have no source of energy. But they project that it's a big garden. Again, that's the whole idea. Green, safe. The beaches are kept spotless. I don't know how it is in Tobago, but I know in Trinidad, you go to any of our so-called beaches, I know you don't, the Begonians don't think we have any beaches in Trinidad. We put that aside for the time. But the bottom line is you go to any of our beaches after a long holiday, and it is a mess, complete mess. You will not find that in countries like Bermuda. No resources, absolutely no resources, but pretty, garden-like, and a major attraction, particularly for the cruise ships, etc., etc. So the point I'm really trying to make here, I'm not saying those are the models you need to follow, but it is possible for a country, an island like Tobago. And there are some positive things going for you. And let me identify those, and that really is where, when you talk of industrialization, attracting businesses, etc., yes, there are things you can do and maintain your mantra, which is clean, green, safe, and serene. You have some real pluses. For example, you have, independent of the power plant you have here, you have cable supply of power from Trinidad. You have a gas line from Trinidad. And in fact, you can almost take the position, well, let Trinidad do their pollution. We get the clean result of the pollution. The electricity has no pollution at use. The pollution is where it's generated. So if Trinidad wants to generate and send you electricity, that's fine. You have your own power plant, of course, which is the next best thing. You have gas, which is the next best thing, where you can generate your own power, you can attract gas-intensive industries, but they are at least the best form of energy if you're concerned about your environment. So that's the first thing. You have things going here for you. I don't think any other island, to my knowledge, can have that, where you have the combination of both gas, which is a very good source of energy for several things, and minimum pollution. But you also have electricity, which you can either generate yourself, or which you can get from Trinidad. And that, of course, has absolutely no pollution. The pollution is at the source where it's done, but once it's here, it's the most complaints that one can make about electricity is it does pollute your landscape in the sense that you have towers and poles, and again, one can, as some countries have done, look at that and say, well, if that's the only problem we have so far as creating a pleasant, green, safe environment, let's do something about it. And that's something. And that solution is easy. Ensure that Tech maintain their wires and poles properly. In some of your more expensive areas, insist that they go underground so you don't see any wires. Same thing applies to your telephone system and your wireless system. You can go Wi-Fi, you're an island, you can probably get rid of all cables around here if you set about it in a very deliberate way. So you do have those options of really creating that environment that meets your national objectives. But when you get down to, okay, that's fine, that's nice, we have a nice environment, but how can we provide employment, economic activity, etc., etc. And all I'll do to end this is just list these things, which I've been thinking about. And again, you have an advantage. There are several things you can do as industry, from an industrialization, with steel, with methanol, and even with elements of ammonia, urea. And you can do it with zero pollution, because Trinidad has done the nasty part of it. So you're in a position where those products that can lead to several downstream things will not have any impact on your environment per se. But I've discussed with the Chief Secretary and Dr. Bob the question of what you can do with steel. The steel is being made in Trinidad and it's a nasty thing to make. But the finished product, you can do several things with the finished product that has absolutely no impact on your pollution. It becomes a manufacturing thing then, and there is no impact on the environment per se. And then I use a broad term, electricity intensive industries. There are several things you can do with electricity, everything from gas. And again, electricity is the purest form of energy you can find. The nasty part of generating electricity has been done elsewhere, and you have it available. Then agriculture and food production. Yesterday, day before, on Wednesday, I attended the graduation ceremony of UTT. And the Minister of Education made a speech, an address, where he was quantifying the impact of the big investment that our country has made in education, what impact that is having on the economic activity of the country. And what came out is that the only real impact and increase it's having is in heavy industry. And when you look at agriculture, the figures were frightening. It's dropped from something from 1-point-something% low enough, it is on decline, to 0-point-something%. So the point he was making, we're investing all this money in training people in agriculture, in food production, at UTT, with UE, at Costa, but it's not having any impact on that form of economic activity, and what are you guys going to do about it? So I have here agriculture, food production. Then of course there's renewable energy. There's another activity you should be looking at, and then I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I'm sure Mr. Mohammed will talk about the wonderful thing he calls CNG later on. And the bottom line is the one I said earlier. Trinidad is producing some of these intermediate products: steel, methanol, ammonia, urea, UN, etc. They have done the difficult part, and the part that does increase, that CO2 figure I gave you, you can benefit. Okay, Trinidad, thank you very much. Let's get some of that stuff you've done the dirty part of it. What can we do with it? So I leave you those words of hope that, yes, I think your mission of trying to brand Tobago clean, green, safe, and serene, probably most of the countries in the world today, when you look around what's happening all over the world, wherever you go, you probably have a better chance than most countries in achieving that. Thank you very much.